I was a party favor.
What does that mean?
I was a party favor. I was somebody you could take off the table.
That's not a rumor. That's testimony from someone who survived it.
You were on the scene and you were powerful. Like, to be honest, like if you're not in those files, it would be an insult because it just means that you were a bit of a loser.
Katt Williams said that, and people laughed. They thought he was exaggerating, being dramatic, stirring the pot.
I've never done anything to consciously cause harm to another person.
Oprah Winfrey said that, and the world believed her. But here's what she didn't say. Her name appears over 100 times in the Epstein files. Ellen DeGeneres, also named. And now, Katt Williams, the man they tried to silence for years, is watching it all unfold exactly like he said it would. This is the story Hollywood prayed would never be told. But Katt told it anyway, and now the receipts are here. January 2025, the Department of Justice drops what might be the most anticipated document release in modern history. Over 3 million pages tied to Jeffrey Epstein.
Today we are producing more than 3 million pages, including more than 2,000 videos and 180,000 images.
The internet explodes. Everyone's waiting for the names. Who was on the island? Who flew on the planes? Who knew what was happening and stayed silent? And then the list starts leaking. Over 300 high-profile individuals referenced across those files. Politicians, CEOs, royals, celebrities, and sitting right there in the index, Ellen DeGeneres. Oprah Winfrey. Now let's be clear, being named in the files doesn't automatically mean guilt. Plenty of people got mentioned because someone else referenced them, or they attended an event, or they crossed paths once. But here's where Katt Williams comes in, because while the rest of Hollywood was playing dumb, Katt was sounding the alarm.
Chappelle was decapitated in front of us. They called him Pilot Boy because he had 19 pilots in Hollywood and everybody passed on him. He said his show. Then when he made $500 million, they said even though his contract said he should get half of it, they said he made too much for the contract to be valid. So we'll offer you 10% of what you made.
Katt didn't just defend Dave Chappelle, he exposed the system. He told us that when you don't play ball, they destroy you. They call you crazy. They label you unstable. They erase you. And guess who helped push that narrative about Dave? Oprah. She mocked him, she questioned his mental health, she made it seem like Dave just couldn't handle success. But Dave wasn't crazy. He saw what was happening and he walked away from $50 million because he knew what taking that money would mean.
I wasn't crazy, but it's incredibly stressful.
Yeah.
And I feel like in a lot of instances, I was deliberately being put through stress.
Deliberately, that's the word. And Katt Williams knew it. He's been telling us for years that Hollywood isn't what it looks like, that there's a machine, that there are gatekeepers, that there are people who look safe, who look charitable, who look beloved. But behind closed doors, they're enforcers. And now, the files are confirming it. Let's start with Oprah, because her story isn't just about being named in the files, it's about pattern recognition. Her name appears over 100 times in the Epstein documents. She allegedly flew on Epstein-connected flights at least 11 times. And buried in those files is an email chain that should have been front-page news everywhere. Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, emails Jeffrey Epstein the night before she's set to appear on Oprah's show. And she doesn't just tell him she's going on. She asks him how to answer the questions. Read that again. A member of the royal family is asking a convicted sex offender how to spin his image on Oprah's platform, and Epstein gives her a scripted response, word for word, ready to be delivered to millions. This was 2011, years after Epstein's first conviction, and he was still using Oprah's show to rehabilitate his public image. Now, some people online have said, well, maybe Oprah didn't know. Maybe she had no idea what Sarah and Epstein were coordinating behind the scenes. Okay, let's give her the benefit of the doubt on that one. But then explain Harvey Weinstein.
Have been part of the problem for decades, but suddenly they all think you are the solution.
That's Seal. And he didn't whisper it. He posted a photo of Oprah kissing Weinstein with a caption that ended careers. He said she knew, she heard the rumors, she was in those rooms. And when Weinstein finally got exposed, Oprah gave a speech at the Golden Globes acting like she'd been fighting for victims all along. The internet called it iconic, Seal called it hypocrisy, and Oprah never responded. Then there's R. Kelly, another predator, another man in Oprah's orbit. Then Diddy, photographed at his parties, in his circles. And now Diddy's facing charges that describe events so disturbing they're hard to even summarize on this platform. A pattern, that's the key word, because when it's one person, you call it coincidence. When it's two, you call it unfortunate. But when it's Epstein, Weinstein, Diddy, and R. Kelly, four of the most notorious predators in modern American history, all connected to the same woman, at what point does the media stop calling it bad luck? And here's the kicker, right when the first wave of Epstein documents dropped in early 2024, Oprah disappeared. Her team said she was sick, hospitalized, a stomach bug so severe she had to cancel everything.
She had some kind of stomach flu where stuff was coming out of both ends. I won't get too graphic. But needless to say, she ended up in the hospital, dehydration, get an IV, so it was a very serious thing.
That's Gayle King on CBS. But then Oprah herself tells a different story.
I was in the emergency room I was so
Dehydrated. You were dehydrated,
yeah. I was like dry mouth and I couldn't keep enough water down.
Gayle said hospitalized. Oprah said emergency room visit. Those are two very different things. And the timing? The exact moment the Epstein files dropped, Oprah went ghost. That's not coincidence, that's crisis management. But Oprah's web goes even deeper, because in 2007, she opened the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls in South Africa, a $40 million project branded as humanitarian work, celebrated globally. Within a year, a dorm matron was accused of physically and sexually abusing students. Over 15 girls came forward.
Former dormitory matron charged with abusing 6 students at Oprah Winfrey School for Girls in South Africa is resuming.
Oprah said she encouraged the girls to come forward, but the former headmistress sued Oprah for defamation, claiming Oprah's public statements implied she had covered up the abuse. And then there's this clip, one of the most disturbing things Oprah has ever said on camera.
You're 7 years old and someone is stroking your penis. It feels good.
Her defenders say she was explaining how grooming works psychologically, but her critics say the framing, the delivery, and the context of everything else we now know makes that explanation very hard to accept. Katt Williams has never directly named Oprah in his interviews, but he's talked about the machine, about people who look charitable on the surface but are enforcers behind the scenes, people who help control the narrative, people who make problems disappear. And when you look at Oprah's pattern, the proximity to predators, the public disappearances, the coordinated messaging, the global access, you start to see what Katt was really talking about. Now let's talk about Ellen DeGeneres, because if Oprah's story is about proximity, Ellen's is about participation. Ellen's name appears in the Epstein files, that part is confirmed. But unlike Oprah, Ellen's connection doesn't stop at flight logs and social circles. There's a rumor that's been circulating in the underground for months, and it goes like this. Ellen wasn't just in Epstein's network, she was actively working in it as a handler. Now, what's a handler? In elite trafficking operations, a handler is someone who manages the victims. Someone who keeps them compliant, keeps them quiet, moves them between locations, and introduces them to the right people. Handlers are often people you wouldn't suspect. People with public credibility, people with access, people like a beloved daytime talk show host. And Ellen's alleged assignment? A young girl named Ava Barron Combs, the so-called adopted daughter of Sean Diddy Combs. Let's rewind. In 2020, Diddy hops on Instagram Live, millions watching, and out of nowhere, he introduces this white girl, calls her his adopted daughter, says her name is Ava.
My name's Ava. I'm a Scorpio.
No. What's your last name?
Ava Combs. What's your other last name? Eva Baroni Cole?
The whole exchange felt coached. She starts with her zodiac sign like she's filling out a dating profile. Diddy immediately corrects her, redirects the conversation, tries to control the narrative. That's not how a parent and child naturally interact. That's damage control. And then Diddy said something that made people pause.
I adopted you like Madonna adopted kids and everybody else adopted kids. Charlize Theron, everybody that's ever adopted Sandra Bullock. I adopted you because I felt that you could,
Madonna? That comparison alone is loaded because if you know anything about Madonna's adoptions, you know they've been controversial for years. Allegations of kids being removed from families under questionable circumstances. So why would Diddy compare himself to that? But it gets weirder. People started digging. They found photos of Ava around Diddy's family years before that live stream. She looked younger. She was already there. So if Diddy just adopted her in 2020, why was she in family photos in 2017? That timeline doesn't add up. And here's the kicker. After that live stream, Ava disappeared. No more posts, no public appearances, no family photos. She got scrubbed. And the only time her name came back up, it was tied to a leaked jail call.
I'm gonna need you to get rid of all the leftover pizza boxes.
The what?
All the boxes left over from the pizza. All the boxes.
Okay.
Make sure you recycle the plastic like we talked.
To anyone not paying attention, that sounds like nothing, just a guy talking about cleaning up after a party. But this call happened while Diddy was under federal investigation, homes getting raided, associates getting questioned. You really think this man is calling from jail to talk about actual pizza? The streets knew immediately. That was code. Pizza boxes, plastic, recycling, those aren't instructions about food. That's about getting rid of evidence. Hard drives, tapes, containers, things you don't want sitting around when the feds come knocking. And here's where the rumor gets loud. Word on the street is that Ava leaked that call. She was close enough to hear it, trusted enough to be around it, and maybe, just maybe, she decided to expose it. But if that's true, then the question becomes, who was watching her? Who was managing her before she went ghost? Ellen DeGeneres. Think about it. Ellen had one of the most watched shows on television for nearly 20 years. She had access to everyone. Celebrities, politicians, business people, world leaders.
Most political leaders come out of a background of being popular. So in some of the countries, except in the African countries, for example, they might have been a military person. They were a general. Or in our country, they would have been an actor.
Epstein understood that. He knew how to manipulate people in power by understanding their weaknesses. And handlers in his network did the same thing. They identified targets, they gained trust, they placed people where they needed to be. Ellen's entire brand was built on being approachable, safe, fun, the kind of person parents would trust, the kind of person a young girl might be handed off to without anyone asking questions. And if you needed someone to keep an eye on a girl like Ava, a girl who was already being paraded around Diddy's world, who better than someone with that kind of public shield? But here's where it gets even darker, because Diddy's operation wasn't isolated. There's documented overlap between his network and Epstein's. Same circles, same private estates, same offshore locations, and the same type of operation. Isolated environments, young people with no clear backgrounds, powerful individuals with unlimited access. And it wasn't just Diddy. Look at the pattern. Usher lived with Diddy as a child, said he saw things that made him uncomfortable, said he would never let his own kids be in that environment.
And I lived with Sean Puffy Combs for a year.
That's the crazy thing. Now that was L.A. Reid's idea, right? We're sending you over to something called Puffy Flavor Camp.
There you go.
If it was so wild that Usher, someone who benefited from that relationship, wouldn't let his own kids near it, then what does that tell you about what was really happening? Then there's Justin Bieber. Diddy literally said on camera that he had custody of a 15-year-old boy for 48 hours. And when asked what they were doing, he said he couldn't say.
Justin, you ever seen the movie 48 Hours? Right now, he's having 48 hours with Diddy, him and his boy. They're having the times of their lives, like where we hanging out and what we doing. We can't really disclose, but it's definitely a 15-year-old's dream. I have been given custody of him, you know.
What kind of mentorship requires secrecy? What kind of dream can't be named? Now bring it back to Ava. She's introduced under suspicious circumstances. She vanishes. A coded jail call leaks. And the only person who might have been managing her the whole time, Ellen DeGeneres, a woman who's also named in the Epstein files, a woman who right as those files dropped, suddenly packed up and left the country. Yeah, Ellen and her wife Portia de Rossi didn't just move. They relocated to the Cotswolds in England right before the Epstein files went public, sold their Montecito estate, said they were done with the United States. Timing? Interesting. And here's what makes people even more suspicious. Ellen's show ended in 2022 after workplace toxicity allegations. Former employees described a controlling, manipulative environment. People were silenced, NDAs were everywhere, people were scared to speak. Now, does that sound like someone who just ran a mean workplace? Or does that sound like someone who knew how to control people? Because if Ellen was a handler, that skill set doesn't just apply to TV, it applies to everything. You learn to manipulate, silence, intimidate, reward compliance, punish dissent. In Ellen's show, it had all of that. Here's where we need to zoom out, because this isn't just about Ellen. It's not just about Oprah. It's not even just about Epstein or Diddy. This is about a network. There's testimony from Allie Carter, a survivor who's been vocal for years about being in elite Hollywood circles. She described being used as a party favor, literally placed on tables at private events for powerful people to choose from.
It's a party favor.
What does that mean?
It's a party favor. That was somebody you could take off the table.
Allie didn't name Ellen directly, but she did say there were handlers, women, people you wouldn't suspect, people who moved victims between locations, people who kept them compliant, people who made sure they didn't talk. And if Ellen was one of those people, Ava would have been a perfect assignment. A girl with no clear family, already embedded in Diddy's world, already visible but not too visible. Someone who could be introduced publicly, then disappeared privately. And if Ellen was managing her, that would explain why Ava vanished so quickly after that Instagram live. It would explain why there are no records, no family photos, no social media trail. It would also explain why, when that jail call leaked, Ellen's name started popping up in whispers, not in the mainstream, but in the streets. But let's go even deeper, because there's another piece of this that almost no one is covering. The dock workers.
The dock workers that is on the port strike has come out and stated that they're not only striking because of being overworked and underpaid, but because they're sick and tired of hearing coming in the port screaming on cargo containers.
Diddy's house is on Star Island, which is right next to the Miami port cargo containers. Shipping docks right next to Diddy's property. Workers hearing children screaming. And instead of authorities stepping in, those workers walked off the job. They refused to keep quiet for a paycheck. That tells you something was deeply, deeply wrong. And if Diddy's network was moving people through shipping routes, who else had access to that? Who else was in those rooms? Who else knew the logistics? Ellen's name is in the Epstein files. Epstein's network used planes, islands, and private estates. Diddy's network allegedly used docks, containers, and private properties. If those two networks overlapped, Ellen could have been the connector, the person who moved between both worlds, the person who made introductions, the person who delivered. And Ava might have been one of those deliveries. Now, let's talk about Zoro Ranch, because this is where the story moves from disturbing to something that sounds like science fiction. Except it's documented in the files. Jeffrey Epstein was obsessed with eugenics, with genetic engineering, with the idea of breeding what he called a superior lineages using his own DNA. And this wasn't pillow talk. He was hosting dinner parties with some of the most prominent scientists on Earth. He was funding research at MIT, at Harvard, at Massachusetts General Hospital. He paid for genome sequencing. He commissioned studies on longevity and gene editing.
Here is a deck about my designer baby project. I have talked with Austin again, and we have a series of questions about how serious you are about wanting this, and what are the ground rules for me even exploring this with you.
The Zoro Ranch is now being physically excavated. Investigators swarmed the property after an email surfaced claiming that 2 foreign girls were strangled during what was described as a rope fetish attack. and that Epstein ordered the bodies buried on the property. That claim is unconfirmed and under investigation, but thousands of acres are being searched right now. Here's the part that should terrify you most. We talk about Little St. James Epstein's Island as if it was unique, a singular horror, a one-of-a-kind operation. But think about what we actually know. Epstein had multiple properties: Little St. James in the Caribbean, Zoro Ranch in New Mexico, a Manhattan townhouse, a Paris apartment, a private jet, an island he was reportedly building a second compound on, Great St. James, right next to the first island. One man, multiple jurisdictions, a global network of powerful people, offshore locations, private transportation, and zero meaningful oversight for decades. Now ask yourself this. Epstein was not unique in his wealth. He was not unique in his connections. He was not unique in his access to remote private land.
To have $1 billion and not create a fantasy island type environment has not existed throughout history.
Right. I mean, if I was going to run some global power organization, I would try to co-opt every single leader, try to stick them in, offer support, bring them out to wherever the fuck I have my big meetings, fly everybody in private jets to talk about the climate crisis.
This is a system. It was never just one man. Epstein was described by multiple people close to the files as a middleman, a hub. He was the one making introductions, arranging travel, providing supply, which means there had to be demand, which means the demand didn't disappear when Epstein died. It went somewhere. Investigators who have followed the Epstein case for years have pointed out that Caribbean real estate transactions involving private islands near U.S. territories, particularly in the U.S. Virgin Islands, where Little St. James sits, have involved unusually high numbers of shell companies, offshore ownership structures, and properties with extreme security build-outs that have no obvious commercial or residential justification. Some of these properties have private airstrips, private docking facilities, buildings with no documented function. Is there proof that one of these is another island operation? No confirmed proof has been publicly released, but ask yourself, who has been asking the question? Because the mainstream media, the same media that ignored Epstein for 20 years, while he flew senators and scientists and royals on his plane, is also not exactly rushing to investigate what else might be out there. Now let's bring it all back to Katt Williams, because Katt didn't just talk about Hollywood being corrupt, he talked about the machine. He talked about how they destroy anyone who doesn't play ball. He talked about how they label you crazy, unstable, unhinged, and by the time you land at home, the story's already out. That's not disorganized retaliation, that's a coordinated machine, and Katt defended Dave Chappelle when no one else would. He explained the baboon and the salt.
Put a lump of salt in a hole, and they wait for the baboon. The baboon comes, sticks his hand in the hole, grabs the salt makes his hand bigger, and he's trapped, he can't get his hand out. Now if he's smart, all he does is let go of the salt. Baboon doesn't want to let go of the salt.
Dave let go of the salt. He walked away from $50 million because he understood what accepting it would mean. Not just a contract, a leash. And now, with the Epstein files open, with Diddy behind bars, with Weinstein in prison, people are going back and looking at what Dave Chappelle actually said in his specials, in his interviews, in his offhand remarks, and it's all there. It was always there. He was telling us,
I wasn't crazy, but it's incredibly stressful.
Katt Williams has been saying the same thing for years. And now, as the DOJ drops 3 million pages and names like Ellen and Oprah start appearing in the files, people are finally starting to listen. Katt wasn't conspiracy theorizing. He was pattern recognizing. He saw that Epstein, Weinstein, Diddy, and R. Kelly, 4 of the most notorious predators in modern American history, were all connected to the same circles, the same people, the same events, the same power structures. And he saw that the people who tried to warn us, like Dave, got destroyed first.
Dave Chappelle was decapitated in front of us.
Now, Katt hasn't done a full sit-down interview specifically reacting to the Epstein file release naming Ellen and Oprah, but based on everything he's said over the years, based on his track record of calling out the machine, based on his defense of Dave and his warnings about Hollywood, you know exactly what he'd say. He'd say, "I told you." He'd say, "This is what happens when you don't ask questions." He'd say, "This is what happens when you trust people just because they're on TV." And he'd ask the question that nobody in the mainstream wants to touch. If Ellen and Oprah are named in the files, who else is hiding in plain sight? Because here's the thing. The Epstein files didn't give us everything. Most of the names are redacted. Whole sections are missing. Victims are still blacked out.
That means that the department produced approximately 3.5 million pages in compliance with the...
Compliance. That's the key word. They gave us what they were required to give, not what we needed. And the people who are actually named, most of them have lawyers, PR teams, money. They can control the narrative. But survivors like Ally Carter, she doesn't have any of that. She's out there alone, telling her story, describing the handlers, describing the party favors, describing the system.
The party favor.
What does that mean?
It's a party favor. That was somebody you could take off the table.
And if handlers really exist, and all the evidence suggests they do, then the question becomes, how many are still out there? How many are still operating? How many young people have been placed, managed, moved, and silenced? How many names are still redacted in those files? Katt Williams tried to tell us. Dave Chappelle tried to show us. Survivors like Ally Carter are still telling us. And now the files are here, and they're confirming what we were told was crazy. What we were told was conspiracy. What we were told was impossible. Ellen DeGeneres is named in the Epstein files. Oprah Winfrey's name appears over 100 times. Both of them have proximity to multiple predators. Both of them have suspicious timelines. Both of them have patterns that don't add up. And Katt Williams, the man they tried to paint as unhinged, as bitter, as a troublemaker, he was right. So here's the final question, and I want you to think about this carefully before you answer in the comments. If Katt Williams was right about this, what else is he right about? What else has he said that we dismissed? What else has he warned us about that we laughed off? What else is sitting in his interviews, in his stand-up, in his offhand remarks, that we need to go back and listen to again? Because the machine is real, the handlers are real, the islands are real, the files are real, and the people who tried to warn us, they were telling the truth the whole time. Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you think Katt deserves an apology, say it. If you think Ellen and Oprah need to answer questions, say it. If you think there are more names that need to be exposed, say it. Hit that subscribe button, smash the like, turn on notifications. Because this story is far from over, and neither is Katt Williams.